So I want to wrap up this topic of competitive dynamics with this slide, and there's a lot on this slide, so don't think I'm almost done. Step one, as far as competing smartly, is to define winning for you. We talked about the very strategies in the previous clip about, do I want to dominate? Am I trying to defeat? Am I simply skirmishing? Am I declaring war? You're going to have to decide what's important for you and what you want out of a particular competitive campaign. Is it market share? Is it profits? Are you posturing yourself for the future? Are you getting a foothold in a market that's going to take you several years to develop? Whatever it is, you're going to have to decide what constitutes winning. Now, at the bottom of all these slides, I've had this pithy quote by the former head of Bank of America. I took this out of a quote in 2006-2007 timeframe. We're speaking to a group of bank managers. He said, I think this is a time when we could really be aggressive, go for the jugular, and take market share. And that really did cap a very aggressive period for the Bank of America, which of course then we had the economic downturn and things got significantly reset. But know what you want. After you know what you want and you're ready to go about it, it almost always pays to be subtle or deceptive about it. Why subtle? To the extent that your competitors never see what you're doing, better still. The more you can hide it, the better. And to the extent that you can't hide it, the more that you can deceive them, the better. Now, with this obvious caveat, you can't lie, particularly publicly traded companies. You can't put out misinformation that could mislead shareholders. Do companies try to deceive competitors? Yes, there's all kinds of ways to do that. Let's say you figure out that they're doing competitive intelligence on you. Can you input information into that competitive intelligence channel that would mislead them? And it's not public information. It's targeted specifically at where they're trying to mine into your organization. Could you throw a document in a dumpster that had misinformation if you knew that they were dumpster diving? All those things would be legal. And I'll also tell you, be careful about believing too much what companies say publicly. They may say four things, all of which are true, but it's really all about this one, and it's the last one they say because they want people to hook in on these three aspects rather than this one. So be very careful about what companies say publicly. They're not going to intentionally lie, but they're not also going to intentionally paint an accurate picture, because to the extent that you are misunderstood in your competitive repertoire, typically it works out better for you. Be opportunistic. Hit them when they are tied down. You will see this in BSG. You will see opportunities to attack competitors when they're in a tough spot. Companies do this for real as well. When Boeing launched the 787, which was somewhat unexpected, Airbus was heavily tied down. They were having problems with their super jumbo bringing it to market. They were also having trouble with a military contract, a major military contract called the A400. So when Boeing announced the 787, it took Airbus 2 years of basically saying, oh, nobody's really going to want that airplane, before they launched their response, which was the A350. It gave Boeing a huge advantage. Too bad they fumbled that advantage with poor execution of the plan, but they brilliantly ran this campaign exactly when Airbus was not really able to respond because it didn't have the available engineering talent to announce a credible competitive response. Speed. Almost always, if you intend to be a second mover, or even if you didn't intend to, you just became a second mover, it pays to move quickly. The longer you give somebody out in front of you, then that's just more space that they've got. Now you can probably find some context that says when you move quickly, you want to do it well. Maybe it will take you some time to really give that leapfrog kind of move. That would work. But in general, you want to move fast. And even when you implement, typically you want to move fast, again, to catch people off guard and gain the maximum advantage. And then, if you're in it, be in it to win it sometimes. So look at, this is referenced in the textbook, but it's a great example. When Southwest Airlines went into Baltimore, which at one time was almost completely owned by US Airways, now part of American Airlines, Southwest didn't go in with a few flights a day. They went in, bang, huge. And they took a ton of market share from US Airways. And so what did they do then? Bang! They went to their Philadelphia, I think it's Philadelphia, could have been Pittsburgh. They went into those markets as well. It's like a double whammy. They really significantly wounded U.S. Airways, and Southwest said, we are going to be the major carrier on the East Coast, not you, U.S. Airways. But they didn't fiddle around. They did it. They did it with massive, overwhelming force, and they said, we just don't think you can respond to us because you don't have the capability, and we do. Then you also have to think about, how does this fit in with your business strategy? Specifically, companies running differentiation strategies may have different outcomes than cost leadership strategies. This was an interesting finding I had out of my PhD dissertation in this topic. Not surprisingly, when companies were running a cost leadership strategy, when they got real aggressive, what they tended to do was grow market share. Interestingly, though, when firms that had a differentiation sort of strategy got aggressive, they didn't tend to grow their market share at all. In fact, in some cases, it decreased some. On average, though, both of them came out equally profitable, which is to say you can grow your market share, you can actually decrease your market share depending on what your business strategy is, and it may work out just fine for you. And the last topics I want to introduce are the idea of forbearance and co-opetition. Forbearance is simply where you see what other people are doing and you say, not going to go there. Understand, don't think it's going to work well, bad for me in the long run, just not going to do it. Typically, the companies that can afford to employ forbearance is one that have highly differentiated positions and don't have price sensitivity or something like that. But they also tend to be your bigger competitors. So they can let the little guys do things that might be harmful, but they'll just hold back and say, I'm not going to follow this as well. And you may see this in BSG. You may get into a price war, and you're going to find the only companies that can work the industry out of a price war are the industry leaders. If the industry leaders don't raise their prices, no one else will. The little guys can try to break out of the price war all they want. It's not really going to be effective. It's only when the industry leaders start to increase their price that everybody else can afford to follow suit. But forbearance in general is a good thing if you can afford to do it, because a lot of these actions, they're going to drain the profit pool and benefit the customers. Another aspect of the competition is this co-opetition, which is where, even though we're somewhat rivals, we decide to try to get along. An example of this, which ended up in antitrust court, is when Apple negotiated deals with the various book publishers to set a common price for ebooks. Now, the publishers benefited because it cut out people trying to underbid that price. Once Apple agreed to the price and they were happy with that price, it said, yes, let's do the deal, hoping that that would anchor the price at that level, which is why they got into antitrust capability. But that price was still below what the book publishers have been arguing for a while, because Apple was, threatening to do to the book publishing industry what it had already done to the music industry with iTunes. You can see today Apple and Samsung are also cooperating on some elements, as Samsung actually makes some of the internal parts for Apple's products. Whether that's going to last long term, don't know. So there's lots of wrinkles to this. Let me wrap it up by saying you want to compete smartly. Now, Porter, if you read his stuff in the Porter's Five Forces article about the rivals really carefully, you're going to see he almost talks about being anti-competitive. And by that I mean they talk about, let's all divide up the pie and make the pie bigger for all of us in here, and let's take away from buyers by not competing over them so that we all gain pricing power. Let's get power over suppliers by rejiggering the industry. Let's mutually improve our products such that substitute products aren't as attractive. Let's erect barriers to entry such that we're not threatened by new entrants. So to the extent that everybody goes to a little profitable position and nobody tries to get into the other guy's space, then that's how you can grow the profit pool for the industry as a whole. So it's kind of curious to me that when you strip away some of the veneer, if you take Porter at his word, it can be a little bit anti-competitive, that it's us against really the rest of the world. Let's all get along and make more money for the industry. Fascinating stuff, and trust me, you're going to see this at play in BSG. But first, you got to get through the first exam, and that'll be your next challenge. Good luck.